When you want to join two edges together just like this, they must be square and straight. And that's when you can turn your router table into an edge jointer. If you're serious about woodworking and you've got a router table, you can turn this into an edge jointer, ensuring straight and square edges specifically for gluing and joining boards together. Now, edge jointers and planers are rather cumbersome pieces of equipment, and unless you've got a rather spacious workshop, owning one is just not viable. When I made this router table, I kept it relatively simple to cater for more people, and as you can see, I made it with a one-piece fence, and that means that I cannot use it as an edge jointer. A two-piece fence that I'm going to demonstrate with these two pieces of ply allow you to do a couple of things that you cannot do if you've only got a one-piece fence like this. Because it's split into two pieces, it allows you to move each part individually either closer or further away from the cutter. And basically what you want to do is have these fences as close to the cutter as possible, keeping this gap to a minimum. As you can see on my fixed fence, I have to keep this as a fixed size, but that can cause rattling as there's quite a big space there. And sometimes it can also mean this edge, as you're running a piece through, can sometimes get caught on here, which can be a bit of a pain. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to turn a one-piece fence into a two-piece fence, and that's exactly what we need to turn this router table into an edge jointer. And I'm also going to show you how to use it as an edge jointer. I have cut two pieces of 18mm ply for my fence. I've cut them a little longer than the fence on the router table with a 45-degree angle to one end. This will ensure the closest possible position to the cutter. And I've kept the second fence just a little bit narrower than the original fence. I'm going to have 4 fixings in each side of the fence, ensuring that it stays nice and flat to the existing fence. But I need it to be able to slide a little bit side to side. So I'm going to have holes in here, and I'm going to machine some slots in the fence that allow it just to move a couple of inches or so. So I've worked out exactly where I want my slots to be, and I'm going to be doing this on the router table. These are the bolts I'm going to be using, and I'm going to need to do a slot and a groove on this face of the board in order to put the bolt right through and sink the head just enough so it's below flush this surface of the board. I've set up 2 stops on the router table. The first one will be the start of the groove. I shall drop this down and then slide along and then lift out, and that will give me my slot on the front to take the bolt head. So that's the first groove done, which is going to house the head of the bolt, and I just need to set it up now to put a 6mm slot in the middle of each there. So I just need to do these through slots on this side now, but if I pop that in there, you can see how that sits below the surface, and it will allow the fence to slide side to side. So I can just pop those roughly in position, and you can see how that will allow just that small amount of opening and closing. These lines here represent the position of the holes in the fence. So all I need to do now is to pop that in position there, and then we can just mark across that line where these slots are. This is an M6 bolt, so I'm using a 6.5mm diameter drill bit. Perfect. And if I offer the fence up, you can see that those holes have ended up exactly in the middle of those slots. As I mentioned earlier, I'm using these bolts which I've angle grinded flat slightly on two edges here. So not only does it now fit in that slot, but it actually resists spinning right round. And on the other side, I'm using a washer and a wing nut, so you'll actually be able to undo these and do them up without any tools. So there we go. Once this is on, keep it loose and you can slide it to any position you like. We'll just push those bolts into the slot there, spin the wing nut, and you've now got yourself a two-piece fence. And finally, we can start using this as an edge jointer. And in order to do that, what we need to do is bring this whole side of the fence further forward, and we're going to move it forward the amount that we want to start planing off, or planing off the edge of the board. Now, if you've got a shop bought router table and you haven't made it yourself, and it does have a two-piece fence, which it should do, you should be able to move this backwards and forwards, either with a handle on the back here or by inserting rods behind the fence. But mine's not that technical, and I'm not going to start putting a handle on the back to adjust it. So what I have got is some wooden packers here, and these are basically lollipop sticks, maybe. And they're not actually lollipop sticks, by the way. I haven't had a lolly and saved the stick. These are bought pieces of wooden packer. And these are nearly 2mm thick, which is absolutely perfect, because what I'm going to do is drop 3 of these behind my fence, like so. Make sure they're all the way down to the bottom, and then we'll just do up those wing nuts again. And because I've brought it forward, as I run a board along this fence, it will hit it. What we need to do next is put a straight bit cutter in the router and set it completely flush with the front of this fence here. So as this board comes along, the cutter will cut the edge of the board, and then that board will run completely flush and smooth along this fence here. So I'm just going to move the fence out the way for a moment, and I'm going to put this 12.7mm diameter straight bit cutter in the router. And my board isn't going to be that wide, so I'm just going to set it roughly about there. What I need to do now is line the cutter up with this side of the fence, and I'm going to do that with a straight edge here, and we're just going to keep adjusting it very slightly until I can literally just feel that cutter is just touching. Perfect. So as we pass our board along, it's going to take a couple of mil off here and then it will run straight along this fence. What's really important before we start is knowing where to hold your piece of timber. As we start, we want to keep it against this side of the fence because this may not necessarily be straight, and we just want to keep it on the longest fence as possible. And as soon as we start going through and we've got enough stock on this part of the fence, we can transfer our hands over to this side and then the cutter will just take care of the rest. And because we're only taking a couple of mil off, and if this isn't very straight at all, it may not clean it up in one pass. So we may have to do 2 or even 3 passes. So let's give it a go. So that has actually cut that really nicely. So it was obviously straighter than what I thought. What I want to do is find a piece that's not as straight, and I reckon this might just do the trick. With this piece of timber, you can see that one pass wasn't enough and there was quite a gap between the fence and the cutter as it was going through on this side. So what we'll do is keep doing more passes until that is completely clean. Well, that has given us a really nice smooth edge to that piece of timber, and also that really is nice and straight. If taking 2 millimeters off is a little bit too much or not enough, you can just change this up. You can either buy some shims or you could just run a bit of timber through a table saw and do it to your preferable size. Coming up at the end of this video, you'll see my routers and routering playlist where you'll find lots more videos. And if you are new to the router, then there is also a really great beginner's guide to the router, which will give you some really helpful information on how to use a router and of course how to use it safely. Thank you so much for watching and your continuing support, and I'll see you real soon on the next video.